Hey guys, it's me, Mr. 250, and welcome back to Banshee's Last Cry. So, these past couple of episodes, well, the first ones I would say were pretty lighthearted. Then, maybe towards the middle, we got pretty dark. Then it got darker. Then it got a little bit happier once we figured out who the killer was. And I think now we should end out the main story with something a little bit more lighthearted. So, this is, let's see, we're back here to Possible Theory. This is right after Abby was killed. At this point is where we started on Bobby's suicide as a reference point. So we're gonna have a little fun here. So we say, I know who's behind it all. Now we say Mr. Jones, not a clue, because we don't know who killed Mr. Jones. So who could the killer be? The killer is me. I bet these people need a little joke to liven up their evening. They're probably having a terrible evening after seeing two people dead, both Mr. Jones and Abby. For a few moments, everyone just froze and stared at me. You? You killed Mr. Jones and Abby? Mr. Forrest shouted, sounding utterly confused. Grace interrupted. Wait a minute, that can't be true. Max and I were together almost the whole time. No, I did it, I tell you. I killed him with both my bare hands. I laughed with my best maniacal voice. I was having lots of fun now. Why would you do such a thing? Mr. Ford still looked as if he didn't believe me. Why? Oh, no reason. I just felt like killing them. It was fun. I kept on laughing until Bobby flew at me in a rage. He had a gleaming razor-sharp knife in his hand. Wait a second, I was just joking! The knife plunged surprisingly deep into my stomach. Someone let out a scream. I collapsed to my knees and fell face forward. I guess my comic timing was off. I love that in so much. I killed him with my bare hands. Oh, I love that ending so much. And it's a fast one, too. Okay. We're going to hop back a bit. Let's see. I want to make sure I get this order done right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to hop back a bit. Actually, to quite early in the story. Here it is. An offer of work. You guys, you guys remember Mr. Buchanan, right? Well, you know, remember how he was like, hey, you should come work for my company. And we're like, nah, we don't really want to. But what if we're like, yeehaw, I'd love to work for you. I yelled it out in my best Texas drawl. Yeehaw! This could be the start of something big, I thought. But it didn't look like Mr. Buchanan had even heard me. Obviously that choice doesn't matter. America is still the land of opportunity, and anyone willing to work hard can still strike it rich. So what do you say, son? Now, Mr. Force and Grace were both looking at me with amused smiles on their faces. Yeah, like I said, I'd love to, I said, repeating myself again. Well, alrighty, good decision, son. Like my mom always said, y'all gotta brand the calf while the iron's still hot. Once your little ski trip is done, come on down to Dallas and we'll get you started. Y'all can worry about moving and all that other piddly stuff later. My days of financial ruin were over. I wondered if they had a good retirement plan too. The future looked brighter. Or so I thought. So, you're just gonna quit your job and move to Dallas? I guess we won't be seeing each other anymore then. Grace sounded regretful. So we can either say, I'm sorry, Mr. Buchanan, but I've changed my mind. If it meant losing Grace, I wasn't interested, or, Grace, marry me and let's move to Dallas. I decided it was the perfect time to propose. Yeah, right. If you want to go so bad, you can go by yourself. And so, once our little ski trip ended, I went with Mr. Buchanan down to Dallas, Texas. 20 years have passed since then, and I never heard from Grace again. After Mr. Buchanan got sick and retired, he tapped me to be the next company president. It's a pretty small outfit, so I doubt I'll ever be a billionaire or anything. but it keeps me busy, and I feel pretty satisfied with my life. That goes double now that I'm in a happy marriage with the two of the cutest kids you've ever seen. One winter, I decided to take the whole family on a car trip back to the Snowflake Inn to show them around. So here we are. When I opened the front door, I heard an old familiar voice. Well, hello. If it isn't that old Texas businessman, great to see you again. Mr. Forrest's hair had turned completely white. Dang, we nearly got buried alive out there, I said, as I was hit by a powerful sense of deja vu. Why do I feel like I heard that somewhere before? Probably just my imagination, I thought. Little did I know that I was about to get mixed up in a horrifying murder. Yeah. That one's a fun ending. I really like that one. I really like all of these joke endings, honestly. That one's just fun because it's like you never escape the death. Alright, so, and last we have the new one that we unlocked by getting one of those true endings. So, let's see, I can't remember how much this is different. We actually have to return to the beginning here. And if some of this is the same, I'll skip around a bit. Okay, so now I actually remember how this route goes. So, if you remember, we got in some of those routes it said that we have access to more choices now. So at this point before, we never actually had a choice. This is the first screen in the game. You know, we're talking about snowboarding, and Grace asked if we're tired. Now we have the option. Now before, we always said, yeah, pretty much. We didn't have the option of saying it, but it auto-chose it for us. Because we had no choice. You know, we only had option A here. But now they've given us option B, where we can say, no way, I'm just getting started, all excited and all. And we're actually going to save that for later. I believe that gets us to some of our other routes. And most of this is actually going to be similar. There was a point, I don't know if you guys remember it, but we're going to go there, where Grace asked us if, you know, when we're in the inn, it's nighttime already, she was like, hey, we could do some night skiing. And then Abby says, well, no, it's kind of crazy storming out there. I've got to get to that point, so I'll see you guys in just a moment. Like right here, here's another choice. We normally tell that we say those clouds look kind of suspicious, but we could agree to do one more. But we're not going to. Another interesting route option here, which we're not going to be taking right now, is we could say, are you in the Mafia? We could ask Mr. Jones directly if he's in the Mafia. That'd be a fun one. Alright, here it is. This is right after us eating dinner, right at the beginning of the game. And Grace said, so how about a couple night runs? And normally, we don't get an option on this. We say, you're kidding, right? We can't snowboard at this weather. But what if we said, sounds like a great idea, I said, thinking it would be a perfect way to work off the big meal and refresh my muscles. And then Abby saying, no, we shouldn't do that because of the weather. And after hesitating for a bit, I say, okay, let's go. The dumbest idea. Once again, we changed into our snow gear and headed out, borrowing Mr. Forrest's car again. The wind and snow had gotten stronger, but inside the heated car, neither of us really noticed. The SUV's tire gripped the road firmly, and we proceeded along the snowy road with no problem. When we were about 15 minutes away from the inn, something suddenly leaped into the car's headlights. Ah! I quickly turned the wheel hard to the left. The car skidded along the guardrail with an ugly metallic grinding noise. Then, there was a powerful impact, and the world turned upside down. When I came to, it was pitch black, and I was stuck in an unnatural position. My face felt oddly wet. When I went to touch it, I realized my arm wouldn't move. There wasn't even the faintest light, either inside the car or outside. What exactly had happened? I heard the sound of groaning. Grace? Are you okay? I felt something heavy start to squirm around on top of me. I realized it was Grace. The car must have flipped onto its left side, I realized. Grace? Max, what happened? Don't worry about that. Just open your door and climb out of the top. Outside, the blizzard was raging intensely. What should we do? I could barely hear Grace's voice above the howling of the wind. I couldn't let her see how nervous I am, so I purposely tried to make my voice sound relaxed and carefree. Oh, no biggie. We'll just walk. I'm sure we'll spot a house or another car on the way. Fortunately, Mr. Forrest had been wise enough to leave a flashlight in the back seat, probably for this very purpose. I switched on the light and then, as a joke, held it under my chin to make my face look spooky. Eek! Grace screamed so loud that it scared me too. Your face, it's all bloody. Huh? I touched my face gently. My hand came away covered in blood. I must have smashed my face into the dashboard when we crashed. The moment I realized that, it started to hurt. Don't worry, just a little scratch. Just a little scratch, your hand is covered in blood. Come on, let's go. The beam of light from the flashlight was too dim to be much use in this weather. The wind made a high-pitched keening sound as it shook the trees and froze our exposed nose and ears. Soon, the hairs in our noses were coated with ice, and it felt like even our lungs were being pierced with painful needles. Grace and I held hands and pushed on. How close do you think we are? Grace asked, breathing heavily. Huh? Don't you know this area better than me? I asked back in surprise. Well, you're the one who's been driving. Suddenly, I lost all my confidence. How were we ever going to find our way in the dark in the middle of a blizzard? Fresh snow was starting to pile up on top of the snow that was already frozen, and our boots made soft, crunching noises with each step. There was no sign of cars or anything living out there, just the eerie shrieking of the wind. I beat back the feeling of hopelessness that was threatening to overtake me, and resolved to keep going until we were out of this mess I had caused. The snow was nearly up to our knees in some areas, and it was becoming hard to walk. If we got too much snow on our boots and clothes, they were going to start getting pretty heavy. Look, there's a branch in the path. It was true. I could see an intersection of sorts illuminated in the circle of light. I hadn't noticed it when we first came here. Which way should we go? Grace asked in a worried voice. It'd be easy to get lost out here. Oh, Max, come on. Grace glared at me reproachfully. No, but seriously, I really wish I had a pen and paper. If I could make a map of where we've been. That's funny you say that. Why? Well, you know how sometimes you go into a room, but you forget what you were going to do there in the first place? It's like that. I'm starting to get the feeling that I'm having trouble remembering the last thing I did. Like, the playback in your memory is messed up, huh? Exactly. I feel like I've lost the ability to do it somehow. I sure wish I had a way to take notes. In the intersection was a thick fir tree. One branch of it was extended further in one direction than the others. By the way, I'm not 100% unsure on it, but I think that little note there is supposed to be telling you that you should be taking notes here. For convenience sake, I decided to think of the road that the branch was pointing to as north, the road to its right is east, and the road to its left is west. So, and I'm going to be following a guide for this, and I don't think you can actually die out here, by the way. I think you can only find a route out. I think. Because I remember the first time I did it, I did stumble around randomly, probably for far longer than you should have been able to survive out here. Like, I spent a good 10 minutes just like going north and south and east and west and turning around and going forward and all sorts of crazy things. So we went to the north. As we did, the path split in two. The one straight ahead went up a steep incline, and the one to the west was a more gradual slope. The harsh wind blowing down from the top of the mountain seemed to be trying to prevent us from going further. Which way now? Grace snuggled close to me, and I could feel her body shaking with the cold, so we went west up the lower hill. As we progressed, we saw a roof structure on the side of the road up ahead. What's that? Maybe a bus stop? Ah, that makes sense. It was buried in snow. No buses were running in this weather, of course. We tried to brush away some snow to see if it would help us figure out where we were, but it was a waste of time. I guess we just have to keep going. From here, the road took a turn towards the north. During just the short time we had stopped, snow had begun to pile in our boots. We were both so cold and exhausted at that point that we were ready to collapse, so we continued going north. The hill became steeper, and the snow more ferocious. Grace, who hadn't uttered a single word of complaint to this point, seemed to finally reach her limit. Max, please, just let me rest a little. She clutched my arm and fell to her knees in the snow. No! If you stop moving now, you'll freeze to death! I dragged her ruthlessly to her feet. What if it isn't this way? Grace said in a quiet, defeated voice. I wasn't sure what to do myself. After a moment of agonizing over it, I decided to go north after all. I think I may have taken a wrong turn here. Let's see. I think this is right. As we went up the hill, it curved gently to the east. The forest looked creepy in the dark, completely different from the daytime, but I thought I recognized it. I turned to Grace to ask her if this was the right road, but she was so exhausted that she was fading in and out of consciousness. If we didn't find the inn soon, we were both going to die. Wait a minute. This road might not be right after all. Maybe we should head back to the car and wait there until the morning after all. Even if the engine didn't start, at least we'd have some protection from the wind and snow, which, in a situation like this, that is exactly what you want to do. You want to be, unless the car is on fire, I should say, as long as it's physically stable, you would want to stay in the car, honestly. No, we can't. We've come this far. But on the other hand, this might be our last chance to turn around. So I went forward praying I'd made the right decision. Look, it's a light! Grace grabbed my arm hard and shook it. Looking up into the blowing snow, I saw a flickering light shining through the trees. It was faint, but definitely a light. Brushing the snow off legs that felt like frozen blocks of ice, I took another step. Then another step. I thought I'd reached the end of my endurance, but the light gave me renewed strength and hope. But maybe it was just a street light. I pushed that depressing thought from my mind. It must be the Snowflake Inn, I was sure of it. We had to be close. We just had to make it that far, and Mr. and Mrs. Forrest would greet us with warm food and hot chocolate. Ta-da! We did make it. My feet caught in the snow and I fell a few times. But I just got up and kept going. Gradually, the light got bigger and bigger. I was certain it must be the Snowflake Inn. I think we're saved, Grace said to herself, sniffling. Yeah. I couldn't believe her good luck. It felt almost like winning the lottery. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't good luck at all. In fact, if anything, it was bad luck that made this happen to us. Still, if we could just make it a little further, we'd be in a warm place with hot food to eat. Saved! We were saved! Joy filled my heart. With our last bit of strength, we dragged ourselves to the entrance of the inn. Something was off. But we didn't have the energy to stop and figure out what it might be. All we wanted to do was to get out of the cold and warm ourselves with some hot chocolate or soup. With that single thought in mind, we rushed towards the inn. Wait, Max, what is that? Grace pulled at my shirt from behind and pointed at the entrance. Huh? What's what? Ah, I gasped. Someone was lying in the entranceway. Did someone get lost like us and collapse just before making it in? But as we got closer, we saw the person wasn't wearing a coat or gloves. This meant that it was either a guest at the inn or one of the staff. We climbed the steps to the porch and slowly approached the person. Bobby? The body leaning against the door was the part-time worker, Bobby. But what was even more shocking was his face. It was covered in dark red blood. Frantically, I ran to him and grabbed him by the shoulders. Bobby! Bobby! As soon as I touched him, I realized that he was far beyond help. He was covered in at least half an inch of snow, and his clothing was brittle with ice. Even if he had just been sleeping, he would have long since frozen to death. He's not dead, is he? I just nodded slowly. But how? Let's go inside first. When I went to open that door, I noticed that the glass was broken and the door locked. It appeared that Bobby must have tried to open the door before deciding to break the glass. But what did it mean? I pressed the buzzer on the side and heard the sound of chimes from inside. I waited a few seconds, but no one came. Shrugging, I reached through the broken glass, undid the lock, and went inside. Do you Do you think something happened? Yeah, probably. Hello? Is someone here? Mr. Forrest? But there was no response. Well, let's go back to our room and change out of these wet clothes, or we'll freeze to death ourselves, I suggested. But before I could make my way upstairs, I saw something else that stopped me in my tracks. It was a woman collapsed on the ground in a puddle of blood moving around her head. She wasn't moving. Ah! Still squeezing Grace's hand, I approached the body. It was Amber Buchanan. She was lying face up. I put my hand to her neck. She was so unexpectedly cold that I pulled my hand back in surprise. She's dead. What's going on here, Max? Grace asked in a voice suddenly gone weak. We had come here hoping for help, when it had instead walked into another nightmare. After having almost died out in the snow, suddenly, being confronted by this had left me disoriented and almost paralyzed with shock. Mr. Forrest? Colleen? Someone? Is anyone here? I was nearly hysterical. My voice shook with a terrible fear I could no longer even pretend to hide. Somebody? The only answer I got was a deafening silence. I thought about turning around and heading back into the snowstorm. I just knew I didn't want to be here. This place was just wrong. I was near to panicking, but I finally got it through my thick skull that going outside right now was beyond foolish. Let's go to Mr. Forrest's room. We crept down the stairs, eyes darting this way and that, and headed for Mr. Forrest's room. Max, I'm so scared. Only a few minutes ago, we were shivering from the cold. Now, we were shivering mostly from fear. Neither of us could keep our teeth from chattering. Stay close to me, I whispered. Then it hit me. Could someone be here silently watching us? I strained to listen, but other than the sound of the wind and the faint creaking of the floor, there was nothing. We arrived at Mr. Forrest's room. The door was open. I don't want to go in. Grace shook her head defiantly. Okay, you wait here. Just yell if you see anything, I said as I peeked through the door. Then, I saw Mr. Forrest. He was on the floor with his back against the wall and his legs sprawled out in front of him, and he had a large kitchen knife in him, and we rushed to the bathroom, and, of course, there's Colleen. Wait, Buchanan? Really? Oh, I'm a little confused by that one. So yeah. They're dead? Oh my god, who could have... Police! Call the police! I pulled Grace along with me to the phone at the front desk. But when I put the phone to my ear, I realized that there was no dial tone. I pressed up and down on the handset several times, but still nothing. It's no good. It's dead, I said. A look of hopelessness clouded Grace's face. But why? How? What's going on here? Grace screamed hysterically. I had been pretty close to that point myself, but seeing Grace in that state had the strange effect of calming my nerves and forcing me to act more rationally. Grace, you have to calm down. Let's go to my room. We'll warm up there and just wait until morning. Fresh tears glittered on her cheeks. What kind of monster did this? I don't know. Maybe a robber or some kind of escaped lunatic. He's probably gone now. But in case he's not, we have to figure out some way to protect ourselves. Maybe the grief over her aunt and uncle had just hit her, or maybe she had just gone beyond what she could handle. But Grace suddenly started to sob so intensely that I was afraid she couldn't breathe. Her body shook as her tears poured down her cheeks. I put my arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. It'll be okay. Come on, let's go to my room. With Grace leaning heavily against me, we made our way to the second floor, where I did my best to shield her from looking at Amber Buchanan's dead body. When we got to my room, I opened the door cautiously. I took a quick look inside, but there was no sign of anything out of the ordinary. I stepped gingerly inside, but the room seemed empty. Just to make certain, I peeked into the bathroom. No one in there either. Locking the door, I was flooded with an incredible wave of relief and exhaustion. I went to the bed and collapsed on it. Am I dreaming? Max, tell me this is just a bad dream, please. It's okay. I don't know what happened, but we were lucky we weren't here. As soon as it's morning. Just then, a scream that seemed to shake the whole building rang out. My blood turned to ice in my veins. It was a woman's voice. So someone was still alive. But by the sound of that scream, I was afraid that whoever it was had just been killed by the phantom murderer. Without thinking, Grace and I reached out and held each other closely. Another scream rang out, and I could feel Grace's body react to the shudder. Now, I'm imagining... Obviously, I haven't said anything, but obviously, we have just stumbled upon the very, very end of the story. We just happened to stumble in there. And I think we probably stumbled in there very shortly after Amber was killed. The girls are probably huddling in their room, and they probably just got killed. Another scream rang out, and I could feel Grace's body react to the shudder. Finally, there was almost painful silence. Until we heard the soft creaking sound of someone walking outside of our door. Slowly, ever so slowly, the sound became louder. Whoever or whatever it was heading our way. I squeezed Grace's hand. It'll be okay, I told myself. No one knows that Grace and I are in here. Probably. Except for the sound, Grace sobbing really loudly. The footsteps stopped outside my door. I was afraid the sound of my gulp would carry out into the hallway. The knob rattled back and forth. They were trying to get inside. Finally, there was a polite knock. Grace and I looked at each other. The knock sounded again, this time a little more forceful. Our nightmare was far from over. The snow maze. Now, wasn't that an ending? I like that ending a lot. I really do, because it's... first off, it's a little bit humorous, because you're just like, yeah, let's go night skiing, or whatever, and like one of the dumbest things you could possibly do when a blizzard's coming. And then you manage to stumble your way back. You basically intercept the story right at the end. And then, just to make matters worse, the killer tries to get in your door and then knocks. Isn't that spooky? Well, that is the end of the main story. Quite a lot of endings, I'd have to say. And let's take a look what we've got here. There's 14 endings in the main story, which we've just completed. There are 4 endings in another one. I'm not going to name them as they are. There's 4 endings in another one. We've got 2 in another, 1 in another, 1 in another, 3 and 4. Let's see. There's a total of 43 endings, though I will say about 10 of them are very similar. So I would say we've got roughly 30 endings. So we've done about half of them. And now we're done with the main story. We're going to be entering into something a little bit different. And this is one reason I really like the story, because it isn't just this main story. We actually have some stuff that's odd, but it will be fun, I assure you. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and come back next time for something very different. Bye.